Okay. Just hold on there. Harish Yadav, what happened? There is no audio. Harish, I think you had the problem in the last session as well. Just check with your mic, or in case you are not able to get it connected, just drop a mail to the mail ID that has been given to you as support, you know, for the support purpose. I think rest everyone is getting the audio, right? Are others able to hear me? Okay. Uh, Someone else is using his ID. I told you that please change your password. In that case, that's the only safest way. Arafat, you are not able to hear. Just please check your mic connection and see if your permission for your mic is given from here. There is an icon you can see in the browser over here, and that looks like a camera or a video cam. And if you click on it, you will see option about to allow the access to your camera and microphone. If you select this and you say done, maybe you would be in a position to provide access to your microphone. Just try that. So back to the session. This is where we were in the last session. So we had a client program that has got a main method. That means it could be executed from the command prompt using the Java interpreter, and this particular method creates an object of adder remote class with a reference variable adder1, and all we are doing is just to call add method on this adder1 reference variable by passing two values 2 and 3, and whatever sum that we get, we collect it into the sum variable of the integer type, and then we print it. In the adder remote class we have nothing, just add method that receives two x and y, two values into x and y variables of the type integer, and returns the sum. That's it. So this is something what we are doing in the same JVM. That means if I want to run the program, I can just go for client.java and run it on the same JVM, and the class adder.remote is also loaded in the same JVM. Because what happens is, if you are trying to execute a particular or run a particular class, then whatever imports are there and whatever objects that you make over here, they are already loaded by the class loader as soon as you start the execution. So that means adder remote is also loaded in the by the class loader in the same JVM that was given to client.java. So a JVM is assigned to client.java, and there is no separate JVM which is assigned to adder remote.java, because it is loaded into the same JVM which belongs to client.java. So this was the idea what we have for a local execution of one class, a method of a one class from another class. Now the same situation, if you see over okay, I can still see that a few people are not able to hear me. Please try to drop a mail to support of upgrade, and probably they could help you. So I think here also Nazish, he is not able to see the session. I don't know why. Okay, the same problem they are getting again. Please, what I can suggest them is to drop the mail to upgrade support and they will help you. Okay, so anyone of you, if you face this kind of situation, then please immediately just drop a mail and then try to fix on your own until they help you. If you are able to fix, well and good, otherwise they will help you. So coming back to the same client.java and add a remote.java, the situation is slightly changed when we have client.java on machine M1 and add a remote.java on machine M2. So now the client.java will get a separate JVM and adder remote.java will get a separate JVM if they are to be executed by by client.java or invoked by the client.java. If adder remote.java, it needs to be invoked by client.java. But because the machines are different, so of course they have different installations and they will get a separate JVM. We will try to mimic the same thing in our machine having different consoles. So the first version that I told you about RMI, it has an architecture where you have client.java sitting on machine M1 and add a remote.java sitting on machine M2 connected by network. So you need to use some tool which is available in your Java folder installation, the bin folder of your Java folder installation. Like for example, you will go to the program files, then you will go to the Java, the JDK, some version, whatever version you have installed, and then you will go to the bin folder. Inside the bin folder, you will find some tool that will help you to generate a component on the client side that we prefer to call as a skeleton, and similarly you will have to generate a component on the machine M2 that we prefer to call as stub. Now these skeleton and stubs are a kind of proxies. Proxies means the skeleton faces the stub as client.java, whereas stub faces skeleton as adder remote.java. So the only difference is that client.java and adder remote.java, they know very little about the network and how the communication is happening, how the calls are being made using TCP/IP protocol. But the skeleton and stub are the ones who know each other and they know how to talk. So they basically communicate within each other. It's like, as I told you in the last class, that the two diplomats are talking, and each diplomat have a translator with him. So what diplomat one says, his translator will communicate to the translator of the other diplomat, and he in turn communicate to the diplomat 2. Then what happened? The situation get a little better. Instead of having two proxies like skeleton and stub that we mentioned by a different name on the two machines, with the improvement in RMI architecture, they removed it with just one stub. So it's like you have got if I remove this skeleton, I will just get rid of it, and I will say here also I have got a stub. So the terminology change. Now I have the term that I will use is a stub, or rather, even better, instead of showing it at different machines at the two levels, I will just prefer to have it something like this. For a better understanding purpose, and that is a step in between, and then this computer is talking to the step, and this computer is also talking to the step. So now in the level 2 or the next level of improvement of the architecture, the next version, you can say, that was provided by RMI, you will find that the skeleton and the stub, these two terms were removed by a single term called as the stub. Okay, so just let me show you how this stub was used, stub was generated in earlier days. Then we will proceed to the third version of the RMI. Now let me check if you have any questions, doubts. Okay. Piyush Batra asked, फिर will we create, अच्छा आधा हिंदी आधा इंग्लिश, okay. No problem. We will create both stub and skeleton objects or just stub objects. Whatever I told you till now is the second improvement over RMI. So as of now, if I go as per the specification of the second version that I prefer to call, in fact these specification have their numbers. You will Google and you will get to know what are they, or whether I will in fact share some document over that. So if I prefer to go with the second specification, then I will have to create, or rather generate, not create. I will have to generate only stub, and that will be used from both sides, from machine M1 and machine M2, on both sides. But then we are moving to the third improvement, that is very latest and recent. And in that, what happens, Piyush Batra, you have not mentioned anything, so just I choose to go ahead. So in the third version, what happens is that this stub that you need to generate manually using some tool, that stub is basically generated dynamically. So to understand what is dynamic, let's first try to see how this was generated, and then we will try to figure out what I mean when I say it's generated automatically or dynamically. So what happens if I want to generate this stub, or even if we go to the first version of specification with the RMI, they prefer to generate skeleton stubs. So the tool that was used in that case was RMIC. Okay, C stands for the compiler. So as I told you that we need to find the tool in the Java installation folder. So let me go to Windows C drive. Let me go to program files, and then we have got the Java folder, then JDK installation folder. Guys, you will probably not found it working in JDK 12.0, my demonstration, because 12.0 has added many things as services and removed a lot of defaults. So preferably I will go for JDK 1.8, although I have installation with JDK 12 as well, but I will go with JDK 1.8. So you can see the bin folder. I have set the path for the bin folder. That means from any of the on the command prompt, from any of the folders, I can just run anything which is inside the bin folder. So just like you have got Java and Java C over here, similarly you will see RMIC. Let me see where it is. RMIC. Yes, see. So this is RMI compiler. So what I need to do is, let me go to the folders where I have kept my client and the server program. So this is my client program, and I will come to those programs separately, individually, and discuss what are those files and those Java classes. So let me come to the server, and you have got this adder remote class, right? I'm not going to show you the code as of now, because there is a little change to the code that you see here in adder remote. because it has to be actually be remote. So there are going to be certain changes. So I am not going to show the code, but as of now you can, until I reach over that point, but you can imagine that the basic function of this add a remote is to have a add method that is going to add two numbers, return the sum computed. ठीक है, तो there is a add a remote .java class. So I will prefer to open a command prompt. I will go to this particular folder, that is demo server in C drive, cd space demo server underscore RMI, and then if we see, we have three files: adder remote.java, adder.java, and my server.java. Adder remote.java is one that I will use to generate the stub, which is common to both client and server. So before even generating the stub for adder remote.java, I need to compile adder remote.java. Normally what happens is, if you want to compile adder remote.java, you will say java c space adder remote.java, and you will get a class file. So typically a compilation means you have got a Java files, and then you use the compiler, that is Java C, to generate a class file out of it from the Java file. But when we see RMI compiler, then we are not going to use the Java file, we are going to use the class file which is already generated over here. So I will say RMI C space simply adder remote, and that's it. See, something has happened. It says generation of use of a skeleton and the static stuff for GRMP is deprecated. So deprecated means you are trying to generate either the skeleton and the stub both, or simply a stub. So that is deprecated. That is no longer suggested to used. They are unnecessary now. So although it is deprecated, it is suggesting that you should not do this, but I have done it, and it has allowed me to generate the stub because of the backward compatibility. So if I just want to see the directory, you can see a file is generated, adder remote underscore stub dot class file. You can see from here as well, this one, adder remote underscore stub dot class file. Now this is the stub file that I was talking about. So in the second improvement, all I needed was to generate the stub, but while I compile, it says that even this is unnecessary, you should not do that. So let's begin from the scratch, and let's try to understand what should be done as of now from the current specification point of view. So let me get rid of whatever I have generated. They are not required. Okay, they are not required. Let me get rid of them, and I am left with only the Java classes. And let's go back to our architecture and try to figure out what we need to do. So before that, let me see if you have any doubts. Sir, can you repeat the command? Asked by Anuj Razdan. Anuj, the command is RMIC. Let me type in the chat window. RMIC, RMI compiler, space the name of the class for which you want to generate the stub, and that is the remote class, which has got the function to add two numbers and return the value. Is that okay? Shall we proceed? Guys, shall we proceed, or do you have any other doubts? Okay. Anush says, I want to see the command line prompt window. Okay, you want to see the command line prompt window. Okay, I will show you again. See, see, we have used RMIC and then adder remote. Adder remote was the name of class file that was compiled using the Java C compiler. So you had adder remote.java, then you went for Java C adder remote, and it becomes adder remote.class file, which is a bytecode. And then I am using this class basically to generate the stub. So I will say RMIC adder remote, and then we get another class, that is adder remote underscore stub. So only stub is being generated as per the specification of the second level, what I was talking about. So this stub is the one which could be used from either ends. Anuj, is that okay? Okay, fine. So let's move on with the architecture. So now what happens is that the new specification says that you also do not need to generate this stub using the RMI compiler tool, and we will do it for you automatically, dynamically at the runtime. So what does it mean? That when the client wants to call the adder remote.java, so in the earlier version it has to get hold of the skeleton, and that skeleton would talk to the stub, or in the later version the client was supposed to use the stub that basically behaves as a common mediator between the client and adder remote.java, and it has to get hold of stub somehow, and then it needs to invoke the add method over the adder remote.java. Now the important thing is that client needs to get hold of something which could basically add as a proxy to communicate between client and adder remote.java, sorry. So something in between is required, because that is the one which knows the networking details, the locations of the client.java and the adder remote.java. It knows how to pass the primitive or the object variables which are being invoked by client.java in a method, and those variables are being received at the adder remote.java at that end, and then some computation is held over there, and a return type of whatever, whether it be primitive or an object, it could be both. So that has to be converted back, passed through the wire, and somehow it has to reach to the client.java, to its JVM. In its JVM it has to be reconverted into some live values, and then the client.java can do whatever it needs to do with the result. So that proxy still needs to be get hold of. But now what we say is, and what rather as you see when you try to run RMIC compiler, it suggested that generating a stub is deprecated. You must not do that, although it allowed me to generate the stub because of the backward compatibility, but still it is saying that you should not do that. Rather you should go for a dynamic holding of such stub. That means if you require a stub, ask it at the runtime, and someone is going to provide you that particular proxy or the stub. Now who is that someone? That's the question. So we have got another entity over here, and that represents that someone what I'm talking about, and we call that someone with a name RMI registry. So now what happens is that while client.java start execution, it will consult RMI registry with the name that somehow represent the stub of adder remote.java, and then at the runtime the RMI registry is figure out where adder remote.java is there. It will internally maybe using the RMI compiler tool, and then finally it will return exactly the same stub that I have just generated manually. So at the runtime that stub is written by RMI registry dynamically. Getting the point? Or any doubts? Is that okay, guys? Please type on the chat window. Okay, fine. So the name also indicates registry. Registry means like you register to a website, so you provide certain details, and those details are later used for any purpose, say login. You say that you are going to do a registry of your house or property, so that means you are going to office and you are documenting that such and such property belongs to your name, and whenever who wants to figure out who is the owner of this property, he can go to the registry office and tell the location or the plot number or the house number, and he can get the information from the registry office that such and such person is the owner, so he can come and meet you. So basically registry is something, it's like a list of resources, and the resources have a name. So basically if I want to use the stub, or I want to get hold of the stub from client.java, so I need to use a name which is already provided by the registry against the stub. But just remember, this will happen dynamically. That stub is not already created. Rather, when client.java is going to request it for the first time, so that stub will be created. And in fact, if there are many clients across the network, different machines, so they will get their own version of the stub. Why? Because the client and the remote, they are sitting on remote locations, and the network details will change if either of the two entities, the talking entities, change. So basically RMI registry has got a name. That name will be used by client.java to get hold of the stub, which is generated dynamically. That is the whole story. Is that okay? Please ask the question in the doubt sections. Rajdeep is asking, is RMI registry is a process? Yes, it's a process. You have to just start its execution. Somehow I will show you how. So it will keep track. Where RMI will be stored? Where RMI will be stored? Mohammad Nuruzama, I am not able to understand what do you mean where RMI will be stored. Can you be a little more clear? Anuj has asked in the question in the chat window, RMI register basically returns the stub dynamically. Yes, it returns the stub dynamically, and it is the only work of RMI register. See, we are talking about a very particular case, or rather the particular use case. When there is a tool or technology, it has got many functions, and to get or dive deeper into the things, there are a lot of things that need to be understood. But the fundamental purpose is this only, that it keeps a record of all the resources that you want to basically use with a particular name, so it could be dynamically get hold of and someone could use it. So is that okay? Nuruzama, can you repeat your question? Where RMI will be stored? I am not able to get it. What is exactly that you want to ask? Nuruzama, is he not there? Okay, let him come, and meanwhile we proceed. So okay, now before moving further, let's show you part of the client code, or rather let's first go to the server side code, that is add a remote.java. Let's try to understand a little bit of the code what we have written over there. So in my system I have made two separate folders. One is demo client underscore RMI and other is demo server underscore RMI, to make you understand that what all components I will need on the server side, that is on machine M2 as in our case. These are the three components that we need: adder.java, adder remote.java and my server.java, the three Java files. And in demo client the adder.java is going to be repeated, and then my client.java, which is going to communicate with adder remote.java. So basically we have two important entities, my client.java and adder remote.java. So my client.java is in demo client underscore RMI and adder remote.java is demo server underscore RMI. So basically our purpose is to basically let these two entities interact to call the add method of the adder remote.java. But we can see that we have got some other entities also involved in the process, and we will try to understand what are these entities and why do we need it. So let's see what is this adder.java. If I just open it, you can see it's an interface. It's an interface, public interface adder, and it extends remote. So whatever classes that we are going to create over here, that has something which has to do with the remote communication. So you can expect something that is pertaining to the remote, remoteness behavior of the communication. So this remote is a class which is available in java.rmi package. So if I extend remote, so that means my interface adder also becomes remote. And you can see this adder.java, this interface is available in demo client underscore RMI, that is on the client side machine, and on the demo server RMI also it is the same thing, that is available on the server side machine. So this adder.java has to be on both the sides. And this particular interface, as you know, the interface is something which just declares the method. It has only abstract methods, no implementations. So it has got a declaration of a public method named add, which returns an integer type, and it takes two parameters x and y, and it can throw the remote exception. So if something goes wrong between the communication, it may throw a remote exception. That is an indication or a hint this particular interface is giving that I might throw a remote exception. So better guard yourself to either catch this remote exception and handle it, or pass it on to the caller. So whatever be the case. Any doubts till now? Please type in the chat window any doubts. Am I audible? Guys, am I audible? Okay. So everything is clear, okay? Okay, we see one doubt. Let's see who is this. In fact, there are so many doubts, okay? No, these are answered. Remote is a class or an interface? Who can answer this question? Remote is a class or interface? So Chandar says it's a class. Okay, so you may answer inside the chat box, that will be better. Okay, so it's an interface. Why it's an interface? As it is extended. So, well, a class can extend another class. Like a class cat can extend animal class, which is a concrete class. It's a simple thing. Interface means just the specifications. That means all you have got is contract. The methods which are abstract, they don't have body, they are not implemented. So they can further, extend its definition from some other entity, which is again could only have the abstract methods and no implementation. Okay, so interface is bound to have only abstract methods and no implementation. Okay, it's an interface. I don't know, I'm getting some disturbances from the background. Although the mics are not allowed on your side, I don't know from where this disturbance is coming. There is some noise in the background, which is not from my side. Rajdeep says it's a class. Rajdeep, how come it's a class? If you assume that you are allowed to extend a class from the interface, that means you will inherit whatever is there in the class, and a class will have implementation as well. So that means even if it is abstract class or a concrete class, it will have some implementation. It might have some implementation. So interface cannot afford to keep an implementation. All it has is just the abstract methods, the behaviors. So interface can extend only an interface. This is a logical explanation I have given you. Otherwise, just telling you the rule that interface can extend an interface is enough. Okay. So are you clear with the interface adder, right? Okay. Now there is another class, my client dot java, and this my client java. If I open this particular Java files, you can see that just like adder class, it also imports java.rmi and everything that comes within this package, and then it is importing java.util.scanner class because I am using the scanner class to read something from the console. The two values that I need to add, I will read it from the console. So I'm using the scanner class, that also because it is not in the lang class, so lang package, so I need to import it. It's in java.util package. So public class my client, it has got a main method, and then I declare two variables x and y, and then there starts a try. Why do we start a try? Is because while we try to communicate over the network, then there could be a remote exception that could be thrown at any point if something goes wrong between the communication. So we need to keep it in a try, and then we need, if something happens, we can catch it in the catch block, or rather handle it. So the catch block as of now is just a simple printing of the exception, and that's it. So it depends upon what you want to do with the handler. You can do your own implementations. So there is a string exit that has got an initial value of c, a small c. Then what happens is that I am using a class called as naming, and I am calling a method lookup on that naming class. So if I can call a method directly on the name of the class, and this class is of course available in java.rmi package, because this is the only package which is meant for the remote or RMI classes, and no other package is important. So that means naming is available in RMI package. And if I can just call a method directly on the name of a class, that means this particular method is a static method. So lookup is a static method that could be directly called on the name of the class without creating the object of the class. I don't need to do something like naming, say naming1 is equal to new naming and then naming1 dot lookup. I don't need to do that. Simply I will just use the name of the class naming dot lookup, because lookup is a static method of the naming class. And then I am going to pass a name which somehow looks like a URI, uniform resource indicator, right? When I say URL, that means it's about a resource that is located on the web. But if I say URI, that's a more broader term. That means I am using a link, a unique string to basically locate something, some resource, and that could be a URL or just anything else. So this is the URI that I am passing, and this is the name against which the real object is registered in the RMI registry. And when I start looking up to this name, so that means I am looking in the RMI registry, and I am asking the RMI registry to give me back the stub of adder remote class. So that means the adder remote class is registered with this particular name as indicated in the URI RMI :/localhost :5005/stub. So this is a unique name to basically get hold of the stub of adder remote class. Of course, the stub will be generated while we are looking it from the client, so that will be generated dynamically. Any questions till now? Okay. One doubt is by Rajdeep Bharti, sir, can we have username password in the URI? URI is just a name, Rajdeep, so we don't need a username and password because it's allocated against a resource. So it is assumed that under normal conditions, if you are using just RMI, plain RMI, so you are authorized to get hold of that resource if you have that URI. Just like if I share a YouTube video link, or if I basically share a Google Doc to you, so I just share a link, and if you get hold of that link, you can be in a position to access that particular resource or document. Is the port number 5005 reserved specifically for RMI, or any other port can be used? No, this port number 5005 is something which I have given. You can use any of the port, but it is advised that you use any port which are not basically used by any other program or any other system program. Normally, as I could remember, that port till 3500 are used for system resources. So you have to go beyond that, if I am correct. or you can just Google. So this is you can use 5010 or 5000 simply. So it's up to you, but that should not be used by any other application. That port number should not be used by any other application, otherwise you will get that this port number is not available and you will get an error. If I have used 9494 port, will that create any problem? You mean the port number, Gargi? If it is the port number, yes, you can use whatever you like, unless and until it is, as I said, it is not allocated to any other program. Yeah, you can use it unless and until it is not reserved for any other program. If it is reserved for any other program, you will definitely get an error, and looking at the error, you will be able to understand that okay, this port is already engaged, and then you can change your port number. So let's get back to where is the folder? Okay. Then we are going to read from this line. We assume that we are able to look up the adder remote class, and we get a stub, a proxy that knows the networking detail about how to reach that that adder remote class, and that is cascaded to adder, which is the interface, and the variable that is going to hold the reference of that particular class, the proxy or the stub, what you prefer to call, that is also of the type adder. Now this is a mystery why it is of the type adder. To understand this particular thing, we need to go into the server side code and try to understand. So I will go Windows folder and then demo server _ RMI folder. Assume that these two folders are on different machines. So you see adder interface is over here, just like it was there in the client demo server _ RMI client folder, demo client folder. Then adder remote class basically extends unicast remote object and implements adder. So what is the unicast remote object? We will be discussing again when we revisit this adder remote class. As of now, just understand that this adder remote class implements the adder interface, and when it implements the adder interface, it has the obligation to implement whatever abstract methods are defined in the adder class. So the only method that we have got in the adder interface. So the only method that we have in the adder interface is the add method that returns the integer type and is public, and it takes two parameters x and y of the type integer. So here is the implementation. We have got the add method exactly with the same signature, and then inside it we print a message: received x is equal to the value of x and y is equal to the value of y. So whatever value is received as sent by the client to this adder remote class, those values are being printed first, and then it is printing that I am going to return the sum x plus y. So it is going to sum it, and it is printing that I am returning this sum, and then actually return it. So this thing will happen on the server side machine. So this message will be printed on the server side machine, whereas whatever the value that you return, that is using the return x and plus y, that will be returned to the client, and the client will print on its own screen individually, separately rather. So basically, instead of just going with a class adder remote, we have created an interface adder first, which promises a method add as per the signature described, and then adder remote basically implements the adder method to do do the computation, return the result, and print the information on the server side machine. Is that okay? So I can see a few more doubts. Let's see. Can the URI point to an external IP address with that is not on the local network? So use RMI over the internet. This is question asked by Sanaya. See, normally when I say you are using RMI, so basically you are talking about the same network. So under normal conditions, without the interference of any other application which may work on the top of it, you cannot do that. But as I said, that there could be provisions made with the help of some external softwares which could work on the top of it, to basically make it available over the internet as well. So that is a possibility. But basically when I talk about RMI, just keep in your mind that I am talking about the network only. So can someone tell me why we need to create a client over here? I mean, for creating a client, why we need a interface over here, the adder interface? Why it is that we are choosing adder remote.java to basically implement the adder interface? In what condition we do that normally? The adder remote class basically extend the adder interface. So why this is basically preferred, why it is being done over here? If you can type in the chat window, anyone? See, typecast, Rajdeep Bharti, typecast is basically happening over here in this code, client.java. Let me show you. Here, typecast is happening over here. So when we are looking from the registry, it's just going to return me an object of the type of capital O object, which is the parent class of our class. So it is going to hold everything in the form of object. So now when it will return, we know that it's basically something that we are familiar with. So instead of casting it to adder remote, we prefer to cast it to its super type, which is the interface, the adder interface. So that is why, what is my question? We are referring it also with the super type adder. So why do we need a super type interface while we can directly keep on working with the directly with the class adder remote? Normally this is a core Java question. Why do we create an interface for a class that implements the interface, and we use the interface against the real reference variable to refer the to indicate the type of the reference variable. Rajiv says, so that is understood by the client as well as the server. It helps in communication. No, basically Rajiv, if we have got adder remote class, that could also be understood by the client and the server. Instead of casting it to adder, we could have cast it to adder remote, and we would have assigned the type also as adder remote in the client side. That would have done. Piyush says it helps in communication. How does it help in communication, Piyush? Meanwhile, let's see the any doubts. Sir, do we have to set up servers separately? Apache, UWSGI, Tomcat, etc. for external communication. If you are talking in terms of RMI, Piyush, then all we need to do is to have a client class and a server, server program. That's it. You don't need any external container specifically. But if we want to extend it to a much larger level, like a distributed application which has got multiple components which are deployed in a container, then still we can fall back to the same RMI, the basic fundamental raw RMI. But then we have got to get benefit from the technologies that comes as a part of the services of the container itself. So those services work on the top of RMI. So we can use those services to basically communicate between the components instead of going with the raw RMI technology. That will be much easier, in fact. Piyush Batra says it allows sending message to the object. See, to send the message, all I need to is to call the method add and pass the values to it, right? And to return the computation, all it need to do the computation and basically return it through the step, the add a remote java class. So it's not that reason. Anything else? Someone is saying multiple inheritance. Yeah, Muhammad Aman. How does interface helps in multiple inheritance? And when you come with multiple inheritance, you must also be willing to tell me something about dynamic binding in that case. Okay, tell me one thing. Let's create a new, say, test class. Let's try to understand. So this is basic Java. Okay. So what is this line? What I am doing in this line? What is this under the greater than a small symbol? This string is written. So what this greater than a smaller symbol basically mean? Please type on the chat window. So that's not array but rather array list, right? Array list of type string, right? So array list of type string. There is a difference between array and array list. The only difference is that array list is a part of the collection class, and that means the dynamic addition and removal of the elements. So you don't have to do something to basically grow or shrink it. It is done automatically. So basically here we are putting a strict type check by using generics. So this format is called as a generics. I am providing that this array, providing the information to this array list that you are allowed or permitted to hold only objects of the type of string and nothing else. Not of the type of cat, dog, or anything else. Only you can hold the objects of the type of strings or any of the childs of the strings class. Of course, we don't have a child of string class, right? So basically, by using this generic, we are doing a strict type checking at the compile time. So if I try to add to this list an element which is not a string, say a new integer value, it will not compile because this list is meant for a string and I am trying to add an integer to it. So it will not compile. It will say that the method add a string in the type array list string is not applicable to the argument integer. So that means I cannot pass the argument integer. So this generic means that we are just typecasting it. Anyways, this was not the purpose, just because we are here, so I told you. Otherwise, the purpose is, one format is that array list is a class. So on both sides of the equal to, I am using array list class, that is for the list reference type. The type that we are using is array list, and for the dynamic object that is being assigned to this reference variable list is also of the type array list. So one syntax is this. The other syntax is list string, and then let me use another variable, say list1 is equal to new Now these are the two formats. In the first formats, on both sides of the equal to method, we preferred or we used the class name here as well as here, right? The list type is also array list, and the object which is going to be assigned to this list reference variable is also of the type array list. Whereas in the second case, the object which is going to be assigned to the reference variable is of the type of array list, but the reference variable is of the type list, which is an interface. It requires import because it's not in the java.lang package. So you can see there are two options available. The list is available in java.awt, that is for the screen design or the for the desktop application, or I can use the list of java.util. So this is basically what I am looking for. So I will just click on it and the import will appear. So these two lines are basically doing the same thing but in different ways. One is using the type of the reference variable as the super type interface list. The other is using the class itself as the super type. So what is better, whether this first line or the line syntax is written in the first line is better or in the second line is better? You may answer in the chat box. Anush says first line is better. Muhammad Aman says first line is better. Okay, so we will approach one by one. So those who say first line is better, please try to make me understand why first line is better. This is a fundamental code Java. Guys, if you need to learn anything in the advanced Java, you will have to be very much familiar, have a good hand in code Java. Why do you think is the first line is better? This is the first line, right? Why do you think that list should be of the type array list and not list? Anyone? Anyone can answer? Rajdeep says second is better because it allows flexibility. Okay, Rajdeep, in what sense it is allowing the flexibility? Same goes with Anuj Razdan. So, in what sense it is going to give me flexibility? How it is going to make my code flexible? Any ideas? Anush says it allows flexibility because we change the list type by array string to any. Uh, you can change by from array string to any means what any? What is that any? Can you type one example here? Or one or two lines of code what you want to show me with for polymorphism, Rajdeep Bharti or an Anuj? Harish says second is better. So whatever be your option, whether first is better or the second is better, please go ahead with the reason behind that. Because we can change the array. We change the array. Can you just type two lines of code how we can change the array? What do you mean by when you say we can change the array? Anuj Goyal says first line is better because as we want to grow are the list dynamically. See, whether it's the first case or the second case, both are basically list, and when you say list, it is going to grow or shrink dynamically. So that's the promise. So don't worry about it. That's not the reason. Okay, tell me one thing. If I write a function like this, say for example, public void run, and I am using the parameter of the type animal. Of course, animal class I have not defined as of now, so you will get a compilation error, but assume there is an animal class. So this could be one way we can write the run method. Okay. Now suppose there are many classes like cat, dog, bird, fish, and they all extend animal. Cat extends animal, dog extends animal, fish extends animal, a crow extends animal, and so on. So do you see any advantage in declaring the type reference variable, the type of the reference variable a as animal instead of declaring it as dog or as cat or as fish as such? You may answer in the chat box. Aman, we will come to the array list in a while. Just try to relate with whatever example I have given. The animal and cat and dog example. That's pretty more simple. Rajiv says if we use the animal to create the object, then we can use the subclass also. Right, that's correct. That is how we use the polymorphisms, and that's how dynamic binding comes into picture. So what he want to say is that if I restrict it to only, say for example, a cat, so from within the client program, if I want to call the run method, I am forced to pass only the object of cat class, and that's it. I cannot pass the object of a dog class, right? But when it is animal, which is the parent type of cat and dog and fish and crow, and it's an interface, so I can pass either dog, I can pass in the next line, say, a new cat object to it, or the fish or the crow object. So because this A is of the type animal, which is the super type, so it is going to accept the object of dog as well and the cat as well. But one thing is a restriction over here, that on this reference variable A, which is of the type animal, we would be in a position to run only those methods on the real objects which are either of the type of the cat or dog or any of the subtype. Only those methods we will be able to execute which are part of the animal class as a contract, animal interface as a contract. So animal is the interface which has got abstract method. So whatever methods are there, only those methods, if implemented, rather they are forced to be implemented in the dog and the cat because they are concrete classes. So those methods could be invoked over the reference variable A of the type animal, and the real invocation would be dynamically be upon the object type. If it's a dog object, the particular method that you want to call, say for example in here I want to call run say for example I want to call this eat method over here. So now this eat method will be called to the or simply a run method that will be called to the dog class if the object passes dog, and the eat or the run method will be called of the cat over the cat object if the object passes a pass width of the type of cat, so on. So this gives me the advantage of dynamic binding, that the real method which is going to be invoked is binded at the runtime depending on the real object. While the reference type is a super type, it could be interface, it could be a abstract class or a normal class, and whatever the method that it promises or whatever method which are the part of it, all that could be invoked. So is that clear till now? Yeah, this is the code Anuj Razdan has sent to me. Let me take this code, copy and paste over here. Let me get into this example of cat and dog. So what he says is, so it's the same thing what I have. Okay, Anuj, what you have sent me? You have just copied and pasted my own code. So going on with the fundamentals of those animal class, animal interface, and the subclasses cat and dog and other classes. Here I have the flexibility if the list refresh type is of the list interface. So here you can see it is pointing to the object of array list. And now at the next line I can also point list 1 to new. Instead of array list I can say a linked list of the type say string. So you can see in the first line, just before this one, list 1 was pointing to array list, and now list 1 is pointing to linked list. But the methods which are defined in the list, say for example list 1 dot, if I just press this, I can see the add method over here. So the add method which is defined for the array list, that will have a different implementation, and the add method which is defined or rather implemented in the linked list class will have a different implementation, because the behavior of the way they work, the array list and the linked list, they both differ. Array list is simply works on the principle of arrays, that is, it works dynamically. So if you want to add something at a particular index, you can or you want to retrieve something from the particular index, all you have to tell is the index value and it is going to work. Whereas in linked list it is sequential in nature, so you have to traverse one by one to that particular element to do any such operations, right? So the real implementation of the methods which are present in the interface, or which are rather declared as a part of the contract of the interface, that could be implemented as per the behavior of the real objects. But using the interface as a type to refer to the object, we have the flexibility that we can use the same interface to change dynamically at the runtime to the new type of object. So that means this particular syntax is better, and that should be preferred over the first one. Agreed? Anuj, in the first line also you just passed a value and nothing else. Array list as list. No, that's not what I was looking for. So everyone is on the same page. Do we agree that okay, we have why do we need an interface to be in place to get the advantage of polymorphism and dynamic binding? There is a doubt. See the first line in the chat. Is this something that you are able to understand? Please type in the chat window. Anuj, what you are doing is basically assigning an array dynamically to the list. That is correct. If you are willing to give me an indication that at the runtime whatever I want to assign to the list, that will go to the list, whether it's an array or a linked list. So from that point of view, you can say it's correct. Basically what I want to show you is something that you can replace dynamically anytime. So you are by that sense you are correct. So guys, are you able to understand? Please type in the chat window till this point. Others? Okay. So whatever I have just discussed, that is also covered in my core Java videos. So if you feel that you need to get a more detailed understanding in uh, relatively slow pace, then you can always fall back to those lectures, and you can follow up and then come back to understand more, or with any other questions if you have. So basically this is the reason, the dynamic binding and the polymorphism is the reason why we prefer to have the interface in place. Interface basically defines a contract that whatever methods has been defined, they could be executed over the object which or the classes which choose to implement the interface. So adder remote chooses to implement the adder interface. That means it has a obligation to implement this add method, and this is where it has implemented, it has fulfilled its obligation. This adder remote also had got a constructor that throws remote exception, and there is a super call. That means before you are creating this object, the parent class object will be created, and the parent class object of the adder remote class is a unicast remote object, right? So there are two things. One is that this adder remote class extends the unicast remote object. The other is this adder remote class implements the adder class. So the implementation is required because we want to actually provide the body to the add method of the adder class, whereas this extension to the unicast remote object by this adder remote class is required to inherit whatever is there in the unicast remote object. So basically I can say, like, if dog extends animal, so dog becomes animal. Similarly, adder remote extends unicast remote object, and adder remote becomes unicast remote object. You must have heard in your networking class the unicast and the multicast, these two terms, right? So what is the difference between unicast and a multicast? What is the difference between unicast and multicast? Guys, you may type in the chat window. Rajiv says unicast means single recipient. So that's correct. It's basically point to point communication, right? It's point to point communication. Whereas multicast means there could be one sender, and there could be multiple recipients, right? So when I say that this particular class, add a remote class, it extends unicast remote object. That means we are going to use this adder remote class for a point to point communication only. We are not going to use it for multicasting. So I think this particular class is fully understood. We have two imports. One is java.rmi.star, and we have another import, java.rmi.server. These two packages are being imported. Everything whatever belongs to this package are imported over here. Instead of going for each and every individual classes that I will use, I have rather preferred to use both the packages in complete. So shall we stop the lecture over here for today? Okay. So guys, one thing I want you to do is for the next class we are going to cover this RMI topic, and we will start with JDBC, Java Database Connectivity. So what you have to do is you just open the YouTube channel. and here go for the Java JE channel, and then as I told you before that I have created a separate playlist for whatever recordings are being done for this live sessions on upgrade. So this is the playlist. The other two playlists are these, Hindi lecture series and English lecture series, which you are already familiar with. So in this playlist, which is a temporary playlist for BTech 6th semester, that means your batch, you can go over there and you will find two basically videos. One is RMI Session 1 that was held in the last class, and then today's lecture also I am going to upload over here. And then there is a MySQL installation. This lecture is there. It is a lecture without an audio, and whatever is required to make you understand, I have typed on a text file. So this is the complete installation for the most basic or the latest version of MySQL. So basically there are a lot of problems students face while installing MySQL, because they have to resolve the dependency of Visual C++ as well, and sometimes the internet is slow. They feel that some of the component has not been installed, the server has not started. So I have live I've used the installation. I have done the installation live and recorded the installation. So just have a watch to it, and for tomorrow I am not scheduling a session, but I want you to basically try out with the installation of MySQL on your machine. And if you get stuck into some problem, like only after watching this video, of course. First you watch the video, understand what are the problems that you might face, and if you are not able to overcome the problem, you are getting some other problem which are not familiar, you are not able to resolve it, you can just get the screenshot of it and post in the WhatsApp group. So at one place, at WhatsApp group, don't pass me on private message, because if you post that on the WhatsApp group, so I will get two benefits. One is that if any one of you who has already encountered that problem, then he can help you directly, so you can help among yourself as well. And even if he cannot do, if I have to interfere, then I will whatever discussion we do, so that will be open for everyone. So any other person who is getting the same problem will also be benefited from it. So if you are going to pass me with the private messages, I will have to respond individually, and then my effort will be duplicated many times. So please don't do that unless and until your problem is very specific in nature. Okay, so I want you to see this installation video, try the installation tomorrow at your home, and then on Wednesday I have scheduled a class at 1:30. That's the time for lab for one of the batches. So I hope it doesn't collide. If it collides with any other teachers schedule, then please let me know. We will try to adjust accordingly. So when you come to the next class, then we will be winding up with the RMI, and we will be starting with JDBC. So I want you all should have your machine ready with MySQL installation by Wednesday. Is that okay? Guys, am I audible? Okay, so for tomorrow you have a task to try the installation with the MySQL, and if there is any collision of the classes that I have scheduled for Wednesday, please let me know. So we are going to drop now. Thank you guys. You may log off.